Live here in the St. Jude studios, it's Chris and Ron joining you every single week on Wednesdays and Sundays doing live shows. It's a special show today. We're breaking down the greatest NBA players of all time. And the rules that we gave ourselves, Chris, we're going to take 10 players.
Yeah.
They have to be from every position, though. We can't just leave out centers, point guards, or forwards.
Right.
And we get a coach, GM, or some office type person who Jerry West might be a good one to go with. But we don't know our lists, and we're going to go with the best NBA players of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start off with the guards. I'm going to go with Michael Jordan as my one guard. We can have the same players, and it's not like a draft where once I take somebody off the board, you can't grab them.
Right.
Let's just agree that anyone who doesn't think Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time has obviously had a successful lobotomy at this point.
I mean, at this point, yes. I mean, Michael, he's done a lot. I mean, basically, from the time he's come into the league until the time now that he's out as an owner, Mike is still impacting the game of basketball.
Yeah. Shoes.
Yeah.
First guy to ever do it. I mean, who was buying people's shoes back in the 70s or early 80s? Nobody.
Nah.
Now, before Jordan had his shoes out, there was a Larry Bird shoe and a Magic Johnson shoe that were exactly the same, and they were built by Converse called the Weapons.
Yeah.
And when I was in 8th grade, I remember my mom, God bless her heart, I must have worked her over for about 2 or 3 months because the shoes were $64. I remember the price on them, and they looked so cool. And they had Bird and Magic back to back, holding the shoe like a gun. And I was such a myopic Boston Celtic fan, and still am. And she was like, "This is it. You better your shoes, you better keep them clean. Don't run through them. Your foot better not grow. $64 got to last you for the next year. $64.
Well, Mom got out cheap because I begged my mom to buy those Jordans. Man, those Jordans are always $100.
I know. Let's talk about Michael Jordan. 30 points average a game, 5 assists, 2 steals, 6 rebounds over his career. 6-time NBA champion, 5-time MVP of the league, 6-time Finals MVP. 14-time All-Star, 3-time All-Star MVP. Stop me, I'm running out of breath with all these achievements he has. 10-time scoring champ, 3-time steals leader, 9-time All-Defensive Team. Greatest of all time, nobody's close. I know that we just had Kobe Bryant in the last month pass away, and there's been comparisons. Is LeBron better than MJ? Is Kobe getting better than MJ, or did he reach that? Nobody's reaching that. I mean, the next person that could possibly reach it is I don't even know, and I don't care because he's so far and above away the number one player, I think, of all time. I don't even think the 2 guys I mentioned are number 2, but I'll get into that later in the list. So at my guard position, I'm going to take one of my guards, Michael Jordan.
2 guard, of course, I'm going to go with Michael, but I'm going to go with my point guard first. My point guard I'm going to take is John Stockton. People sleep on John Stockton. John Stockton, ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't know who John Stockton is, John Stockton played for the Utah Jazz. John Stockton is the all-time assist leader in the NBA history. So just think about that, kids. You have a small point guard, about 6 foot, averages about 20 points a game, and then he drops off like 10 dimes every game. So I'm going with John Stockton, and not only that, but every year he was playing basketball, it took his team to the playoffs. That just shows you just how good of a leader John Stockton was, and how much he was a team player. Dishing off to his co-host Karl Malone.
Well, they didn't always have a lot of talent in Utah.
No, they didn't.
Those were under the Jerry Sloan years when he was coaching up there, and they weren't known as powerhouse teams. They didn't put a lot of talent around him, and he was still a very successful player named to the All 50.
Yeah, he is. NBA All 50. I mean, you got to think though. I mean, you had a backcourt with a small backcourt with John Stockton and Jeff Hornacek. I mean, small backcourt, unathletic. You wouldn't think of them as a team that could compete with the Chicago Bulls, but they gave them a run for their money.
My second guard position, I'm going with Kobe. Kobe Bryant, 5-time champion, 17-time All-Star, 2-time scoring title, 1 MVP, 2-time scoring title, and he won the MVP 1 time, over 30,000 points. Won his championships with talent around him, and then when Shaq left the LA Lakers, didn't have as much talent around him. So my 2 point guards that I'm going with right off the bat are going to be Kobe and Michael Jordan.
Oh, so you're going two guards as a point? Woo.
Well, There's other people.
Woo!
There's other people on the list that can play the point guard position. Those are just the
Woo!
first two I'm starting with.
Okay. Well, all right. I mean, well, I guess my two guard at that position is going to be Michael, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotta be. I'm also going to take Magic Johnson. So Magic to me can play the point, even though he's 6'9". Remember back in 1981 in the finals against the Philadelphia 76ers, he actually played all five positions.
Right.
So he can be my point guard all day long. And he wasn't known as a great shooter. He was more known as a facilitator and manager of the offense. 3-time MVP, 2-time steals leader, believe it or not, 9-time All-Star, was a part of the 1992 Dream Team, and a 5-time NBA champion. So I've got Magic, I've got Kobe, and I've got Jordan as my guards.
3 guard. Ooh.
That's
All
pretty
right.
strong.
Pretty strong. Okay. Well, I'm going to take LeBron James. I mean, you have LeBron James. They plays basically point forward. He can play the 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 if you need him to be, if you're running a small lineup. You have LeBron James, who has, again, over 30,000 points, has over 10,000 assists, 3-time NBA champion, 4-time four-time MVP. I mean, you have LeBron. I mean, he took Cleveland from 3 down to come back and beat probably the most dominant team in NBA history with the Golden State Warriors. And so LeBron James is going to be my third one on that list.
Good one. Moving into the forward positions, I'm going to go back to old school. And if you don't know some of these older players, looking up their stats and some of their highlights would be incredibly awesome, because these guys were incredibly awesome. I'm going at one of my forward positions with the big O, Oscar Robertson. Now, this guy has some incredible stats that I think a lot of the younger generation might not know about. 1966, won the gold medal in the Olympics in basketball for the U.S. College Player of the Year in 1958, 1959, and 1960. So his last 3 years of college, he was the College Player of the Year. 1961 Rookie of the Year, 61 through 69, all NBA first team. 61 through 69. 1964 MVP of the league. He played with the Cincinnati Royals, who aren't even around anymore, and the Milwaukee Bucks. Averaged a triple-double. So let's just talk about this for a second, because a couple seasons ago, we had Russell Westbrook averaging a triple-double over a whole season, and the NBA just went crazy over that. This is what Oscar Robertson did. 1961, 62, 63, and 64. He averaged a triple-double all those years. Now just think about that. So at my forward position, I'm taking Oscar Robertson. Not a lot of people know about him that are under 30 years old, and I think he's one of the top 10 probably best basketball players of all time.
All right. My forward position that I'm going to take, I'm going to go with Karl Malone. A lot of people sleep on Karl Malone. Karl Malone also played with the Utah Jazz, and he was part of that tandem with John Stockton. He was the other half. They ran a pick and roll which was unstoppable. I don't care who it was. You could not stop that pick and roll. If you went on Karl Malone, he dished it back to John Stockton for the 3. If you went with John Stockton, he dished it off to Karl Malone for a 15-foot jumper, a pump fake, or he drove it in and dunked on your head. But Karl Malone is also the second scorer in NBA history right now. LeBron James is following him, of course, and then, of course, that's topped by, the big guy up front, Kareem, but we'll get to Kareem later.
All-time scoring list, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely right now, my forward that I'm going with is Karl Malone.
Okay, my other forward that I'm going to go with is obviously going to be LeBron James at one of my forward positions. Like you said, I don't think of him ever as a guard, although he facilitates a lot. When he brings it up, he can run the offense. He is a great passer. I think for his height and weight, I put him at a 3 or 4 position just so I'm getting those rebounds. But he could step outside and shoot it. He's been able to do that. He's won championships with multiple teams. He's done it with nobody on his team. He's done it down in Miami when he had talent. He's trying to rebuild himself out in LA. I think the clock is kind of running out on him there. But as far as one of my forwards, I absolutely have to have LeBron on the list. Who else do you have at forward?
All right, my forward is going to be, he's a newbie, but he's an assassin. I'm going with KD. The guy's an assassin. Nobody can stop this guy. These guys basically He's a 7 footer.
I know.
A 7 footer with crossover, with point guard handles, and with a jump shot that's silky smooth as Ray Allen's. I mean, you have a guy that can take you inside, outside. He's gotten better defensively. I know right now he's sitting down the sideline with an Achilles injury, but I mean, you have a guy that's basically unstoppable from 30 feet all the way inside to the basket. KD is my guy.
Yeah, Kevin Durant, great player. Started out with the Seattle Supersonics.
Exactly.
Seattle Supersonics. They're not around anymore. So we think of him as a young, up-and-coming, established player, not an up-and-coming player. But he's actually been around for quite a while. My next forward that I'm going with is another one. You're going to have to go Google him. It's Bill Russell. Bill Russell is an 11-time NBA champion, 5-time MVP, 12-time All-Star, rebounding leader in the NBA 4 times. Also received in 2010 from President Obama the Presidential Medal of Freedom for an NBA player. I think he's the only NBA player that's ever won that award. And this is what's amazing. Not only did the Celtics win 8 championships in a row, he won 11 of them, but 66, 67, 68, and the 69 season, they won championships with Bill Russell as a player and a coach.
Yeah.
Think about that. He was coaching them. So in 68 and 69, they were the champions. And they were in the finals those 4 years. Right. So just think about that. Can you think of the Steph Curry as the coach and the player and winning multiple titles. It's just like the younger generation, I think, isn't going to be able to grasp that. I've never seen it happen. Have you?
No, you probably will never see that happen again.
And it happened in the finals for 4 years, 2 of which he won. And besides that, he broke down a lot of the racial stereotypes in the toughest city to do it, which is Boston in the 50s and 60s. There was all kinds of racial turmoil, and he was part of what Red Auerbach did, which was break down the color barrier in the NBA. So he's got ops, and plus he was in Miami Vice. Go Google that. He starred in an episode of Miami Vice, one of the greatest series on TV series ever in the past 50 years. So he's done it on TV. He's done it in the civilian world. He's done it in his professional world in the NBA. Bill Russell, 11 times. 11. You got to put one around your neck, and you got one on every finger. Bill Russell, one of the best, absolutely, of all time.
Yeah, so we're going to forwards. I cannot be remiss. I'm going my power forward without having Tim Duncan somewhere in this lineup. You have Tim Duncan, again, who has over 20,000 points, multiple NBA champion with the San Antonio Spurs, finals MVPs, league MVPs. You name it, Tim Duncan has done it. He has over 10,000 rebounds. Where can I go? He has one of the most unstoppable bank shots ever. He made the bank shot popular again. Low post moves, great feet work. Just one of Pop's guys. He's a guy who bought into the system, never had any issues on the court, off the court. Great all-around guy. Still coached with the San Antonio Spurs now, helping out with LaMarcus Aldridge to try to get him better in the low post game. Great all-around guy, Tim Duncan.
Moving into centers, I am taking who I think is the second best NBA player of all time, Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain, to me, is super undervalued, probably too many times forgotten, and a lot of people don't understand all that this guy did during his NBA career. Let's start with the fact he still holds 72 NBA records. So after Michael, after Magic, after Bird, after Pippen, after Kobe, after Shaq, after Hakeem, after Patrick Ewing, after Tim Duncan, after all these guys have gone through their careers, he still holds 72 NBA records. He averaged 23 rebounds a game for a whole season. He averaged 50.4 points for a whole season. Just camp on those numbers. That is insane. He averaged 50 points. No one is doing that, ever. 13-time All-Star, 7-time scoring champion, 10-time All-NBA first team, 4-time MVP. His first 9 years in the NBA, he averaged at least 30 points a game and 22 rebounds. Think about that. His first 6 years in the league, he averaged 38 points a game, 38, 50, 45, 37, and 35. In his first 6 years. One of those years, in his third year, it was 50 points a game he averaged. In his fourth year in the NBA, he was averaging 45 points a game for a whole season. That is so galactically insane. No one knows about this guy enough. We so undervalue him. On top of that, the NBA changed 62 rules called the Wilt rules just because of how dominant he was. Wilt Chamberlain is absolutely hands down. It's not even close. He is the second best player ever in the NBA, and he is on my list as my first center.
My first center, I'm going to go with the all-time NBA point scoring leader, the innovator of the skyhook, Los Angeles Lakers legend. I'm going to go with no other than Lou Alcindor, a.k.a. also known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, you have a guy who basically created a move that nobody could stop. I don't care how tall you were, how big you were in the post. The skyhook was masterful, and he teamed up with Magic, and they were able to create some of the best moments known as Lakers Showtime. So my guy, first guy, Kareem.
I'm going to agree with you at the center position also with Tim Duncan. He's the next guy on my list. I'm putting him at center. 5-time NBA champ, 3-time MVP, 2-time league MVP, so 3-time finals MVP. Yeah. 15-time All-Star, 10-time NBA All-NBA first team, one of only 4 players to be drafted number 1 overall, also win the Rookie of the Year, also win the MVP, and also win a Finals MVP. Now, as a side trivia, he's only one of 4 players. Who are the other 3 players in the NBA that did that, Chris? Do you know who they are? They won the Rookie of the Year. They were drafted number 1 overall. They won a league MVP title, and they won a Finals MVP. There's been 4 guys. Tim Duncan's one of them. Who were the other 3?
Oh, gosh. You wouldn't speak me now. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Let's see.
One of them Magic, you just named.
I know it wasn't. I think.
You just
Magic.
named one of them. No.
Nope.
Magic didn't do it. He didn't win the Rookie of the Year. Magic didn't win the Rookie of the Year. Bird won. They both came.
Yeah,
both came out.
Like,
so Larry and Magic were both rookies the same year, and Larry won it. The other 3 guys that did it were Kareem,
right,
LeBron, and Shaq. On top of that, 17 seasons in San Antonio. Only one time did they win less than 50 games while Tim Duncan was there. He has over 251 playoff appearances. Now, why is that important? Because it's more than 18 teams in the NBA. 18 franchises in the NBA right now have not played 251 playoff games, and Tim Duncan has. So I agree with you. Tim Duncan's on my list at center. I think he's one of the dominant guys. Again, never heard of him off the court getting into problems. Good locker room guy. Didn't want the shine the light of celebrity on him. He just went to work every day. He was just a constant winner.
Yeah, he really was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my other center I'm going to go with is he's probably the most dominant center probably since Wilt, and that's going to be the big Aristotle, Shaq Fu, whatever you want to call it. I'm going with Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, you have Shaq, who basically dominated the league from his entrance until the ending of his Laker career. He's a 4-time NBA champion, 3-time Laker Finals MVP. You know, he averaged like in the finals at I think the last year he averaged like 30 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds, over 10 rebounds in the game. And definitely, again, he's one of the most dominant centers they ever played a game.
Yeah, Shaq. I've got Shaq on my list too. I'm going to start going with other players out there that I added as alternates. One of them's got to be at the forward position, somebody who I think revolutionized basketball coming out in the late 80s, and that's Larry Joe Bird. Played at Indiana State for the Sycamores, got drafted by the Celtics, and 3-time champion, 3-time MVP. 1979, he won the Rookie of the Year award. He was a coach with Indiana. He has the highest winning percentage of any coach in the NBA ever to not win a title. So you think about all the times he took the Pacers to the playoffs. He didn't win a title, but he has the highest winning percentage. So he won in the front office too. 1980 Rookie of the Year. Also, The greatest single season turnaround of any franchise was his rookie year with the Boston Celtics. 1998 NBA Coach of the Year, also a part of the 92 Dream Team. He could pass. And if you think about it, look at the Celtics teams from the 1980s and the up until about 93. Look at all the players on their team that were nobody before they got to be playing with Larry Bird. Robert Parrish was a role player. He would never be in the Hall of Fame. Larry Bird helped make him great. I could say the same thing about Dennis Johnson. I could say the same thing about Ainge. I could say the same thing about Kevin McHale. None of those guys were anything until they got with Larry, and Larry made those guys better, along with all those Celtic teams, coached, of course, by K.C. Jones. Smart, intelligent, over 90% from the free throw line, multiple AT&T long-distance all-star champion shooter, 3-time MVP, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest 50 of all time. Larry Bird's got to be on my list just for intelligent factor. He's one of the smartest players ever that's ever been out there.
Yeah, I'm going. My alternate, of course, is going to be the late great Kobe Bryant. You already gave Kobe stats, but I mean, just for his killer mentality, his Mamba mentality that he's known for. I mean, then you got to think of the toughness of this guy. This guy went and shot free throws with a torn Achilles. I mean, he refused to leave the game. I mean, you know how much competitiveness you have to shoot the ball, shoot free throws with a torn Achilles and walk off the court.
Yeah.
Kobe, man.
And that's what we've heard ever since he passed away 3 weeks ago, is just the drive that he had to be the number one, the best player that he could be. And that's what we've heard. We've heard dozens and dozens of stories of that. So I've got Shaq on my list also at center. And then my last player that I'm going to take is going to be Karl Malone. So you mentioned number 2 all-time in scoring. All-time. Out of all the NBA players that have ever played, he's only behind Kareem as number 2, scoring 36,928 points. So most seasons ever with 2,000 points consecutively. Think about that. 11 years in a row, he scored at least 2,000 points every single year. He could step out and hit a 15 or 18-foot jump shot, driving the lane. Once the Utah got that fast break going, there was no stopping him. I mean, what were you going to do? He was, 6'4", no, he was actually bigger than that. He's like 6'9", 6'9", 250, 260 at different times. He was bigger than LeBron. Yeah. And you get him going full steam downhill, into the lane. It's like, forget about it. He could pull back on a 12-foot shot. He had moves in the paint. He was a rebounding nightmare. He was a matchup nightmare for centers. There was nobody in the league at that time that you could put a power forward against him. You had to throw your center against him. And then they had a 7'3" Mark Eaton you had to deal with. So it was just a matchup nightmare that he created. He's a Hall of Famer. Again, one of the 50 greatest players of all time named by the NBA. So my last guy, Karl Malone, like you said, a lot of people sleep on Karl Malone. If you didn't grow up in the 90s and the late 80s and see what Karl Malone and John Stockton did, both these guys more than deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And, like I said, a lot of the younger generation didn't see him play. They don't know that there was also awesome, dominant players like LeBron before LeBron was there.
Yeah, I mean, they really don't, And, what it boils down to is basically guys like us, telling these kids about these guys to go on YouTube and actually look at them and check them out. My final guy is he's Michael Jordan's Robin to Michael Jordan's Batman is going to be Scottie Pippen. He's one of the 50 greatest 50 greatest players all time. Small forward, big Lone Ranger guy, averaged over 20 points a game. And, basically he took, the Bulls on his back when Jordan decided to retire. And I mean, Scottie's another unsung hero in the game of basketball.
So we wanted to go over our top 10 best players of all time. And then we wanted to add in either a coach, GM, or a front office person. And for me, that's going to be Red Auerbach. Red Auerbach was with the Celtics organization for about 35 years. Not only was he the coach there, he was the GM as the coach. 20 seasons with the Boston Celtics. They won 11 divisional titles, including 9 in a row. So just think about that. You want to be in the Eastern Conference Division in the late 50s and 60s, you're not going to win anything because they won 11, including 9 in a row divisional titles. 11 trips to the finals, including 10 in a row. So overall, over 20 years, over half the time, they're in the finals, including 10 years in a row, 57 to 66, 9-time NBA champion. drafted the first black player ever to play in the NBA in 1950. He drafted Chuck Cooper, which, again, he was one of the main guys in the NBA who first started off integration. And it was not popular in the NBA at the time. It was certainly not popular in Boston, which was a racially segregated city at the time. And he's the guy that did it. He's also the first coach to ever put on the court 5 starters that were all of African-American descent in 1964. So again, not only was he winning, but he was an innovator for civil rights and civil justice. NBA Coach of the Year award is named after him. Red Auerbach did it as a GM. He did it as a coach. He did it on the front line of civil rights. He did it on the front line of equality in one of the toughest cities. For me, I thought about Jerry West. I thought about a couple other people because Jerry West is still out there doing it. But for me, everything he did, not only as a coach and a GM and in the social arena, I've got Red Auerbach as my front office guy with my super team.
No super team. Well, I'm going to go with someone almost similar in the sense. Basically, he's been a innovator in a sense for women's rights. He actually, hired one of the first female coaches to be on his staff. She's a 5-time NBA winning coach. Started out as the general manager. What he actually was a part of the United States military force. I'm going to go with no other than Greg Popovich. Popovich, again, he was a 5-time NBA champion. He hired the first female coach to be on his staff, and not only that, I mean, his teams they're in the playoffs just about every year. He drafted the greatest players. I mean, you had Tim Duncan. Then on top of that, he meant so much to the international game by bringing in Tony Parker from France, bringing in Manu Ginobili from Argentina. I mean, basically bringing the world together. And then on top of that, he's been speaking out. Definitely with the turmoil that's been going on with America, as far as recently when it came down to the division that we have going on in politics. So definitely, Greg Popovich is my guy.
Greg Popovich has been a great ambassador for the NBA, and look, we got Manny here in the First Round Studios supporting our picks for greatest NBA players of all time. We thank you for joining us. Who are the greatest NBA players? If you had to take 10. Let us know who they are. You can reach us on Twitter at the First Round 1 or write us in here and we will talk about it on the next show. We do live shows on Wednesdays and Sundays. The email address is thefirstроundrd@gmail.com. We want your questions and comments. Thank you for joining us here on our greatest countdown of the most awesome, greatest NBA players of all time. Until the next time we see you out here on YouTube, take care, everybody.